Hi everyone, I'm szew, and back in February I decided to rekindle my passion for drawing by doing a challenge where I tried to draw for 30 days straight. It's been a while since I recorded the clips and the main voiceover, but I decided to finally put them together and publish this video. My overall goal was to build a habit and focus on human anatomy, with the addition of other topics as I realized I need them along the way. I knew that drawing every day won't be feasible for me as I work full time, so I decided that drawing almost every day was good enough. Again, focusing on building and maintaining the habit was the top priority here. And before we start, an obvious disclaimer: this video was inspired by PewDiePie and other creators that also challenged themselves to draw daily. Day 0. Yes, we do have a day 0, because saying I'll start tomorrow is the worst thing you can do to yourself. So I started immediately. I found a YouTube channel called The Drawing Database that has an in-depth series on human anatomy for artists, and I mainly followed these videos for the first half of the month. Starting with the video on head and neck, I learned the planes of the skull and sketched along. For days 1 and 2, I was continuing the head and neck video and sketching along. As you can see, the instructor showed the skull from many different angles and then proceeded to draw muscles over the bones. These videos are very detailed. I was overwhelmed and it was really hard to retain all of the information. Additionally, the proportions of the face weren't mentioned explicitly, so on day 3 I decided to watch some other videos on face proportions, mainly the Loomis series from Proco. I also came across Sakra's video on iterative drawing, and I really recommend it for people who want to learn more about this drawing learning approach. In my case, I decided to stick to learning fundamentals, but I'm sure I will be using the iterative drawing method in the future. On day 4, I finished the head and neck video with the quarter and the back view of the head, which I'll admit I'm not super proud of. Day 5 was spent studying the structure of the eye. I'm pretty sure I skipped some parts of the video. Again, I wasn't super proud of these drawings and they look flat. I concluded that I need to focus more on understanding the 3D form behind it. Day 6 was a day full of looking for my sense of purpose and rethinking my life, therefore I didn't draw anything at all. Day 7 started off early in the morning as I rewatched the Proco videos on the Loomis method and drew along, as I wanted to touch up on proportions and planes of the head. I realized that my biggest hurdle was the circle indicating the side plane, which was pretty important since the angles of the eyebrow bridge and the jawline depended on it. I decided it was time to switch to digital, as it would make it easier to correct my mistakes this way. I don't want to go into detail with each drawing, but my process looked more or less like this. Firstly, I would draw the base shape of the head with the reference next to it. Then I would move my sketch layer over the reference to compare the angles and take notes what mistakes I made. And then thirdly, I would redraw the head completely, trying to improve on the points I missed previously. In case of this head, for example, I got so frustrated at not getting the angle right that I drew the main head and the side plane circles over the reference and then tried to get the rest right based on that. On day 8, I practiced the Loomis method again, partially as a warm-up, partially to get it together. I was constantly looking back at my previous drawings to make sure that I remember all of the elements. I was really eager to put some features on the faces already, so I started with the nose video, but unfortunately couldn't focus very well. I kept practicing the head structure throughout days 8, 9, 10, and 11. I even tried to incorporate some crazier angles. Then a very busy week started. I didn't draw on days 12 and 13. On day 14, I drew along the mouth video from the drawing database channel. And then again, I didn't draw from day 15 to day 20, so almost an entire week. It was partially being busy, but I was also facing a dilemma. I felt a lack of direction, even though I initially structured my challenge, and I also felt like forcing myself to draw specific elements of anatomy only took away the creative side of drawing. But I was also aware that without fundamentals, I will be unhappy with the stuff I draw. On day 21, I sketched some heads and features from my memory, but I wasn't really happy with them. Then I moved to digital, where I also sketched a Loomis head and did something really fun, drew a bunch of noses and studied different shapes, which really inspired me to continue. On day 22, I approached a completely new topic, gesture drawing. I drew a few figures without any tutorials, and I think it went okay. Understanding the 3D form of the body was really important to me, and I also wanted to work on fluidity of the drawings. Later on, I continued practicing different noses and drew full faces. My main struggle were proportions. As you can see, I was using the liquify tool to compare what went wrong, and my noses were just too long for the faces. Day 23, I watched a video about gesture drawing and drew literally zero conclusions out of it because I just sped through the figures I was drawing later. I think I was simply feeling too excited to be able to draw full humans again. The forms seemed familiar, like I knew how to do this before, and the muscle memory was simply taking over. I didn't draw on day 24, which marked a total of 10 days during that challenge that I didn't draw on. On day 25, I started off with some gesture drawings, but I had a big problem with the really quick wins, as it was hard for me to simplify the human body. On days 26 and 27, I switched again and practiced my line confidence on paper. I think some part of the gestures I thought I drew on the 25th were also drawn on one of those days, but I'm not completely sure now. On day 28, I jumped the topic again and decided to approach proportions of the human body and finally learn some basic shapes to help me simplify the forms. I didn't draw on day 29. On day 30, I felt like I wasn't done yet, since I skipped so many days previously. Therefore, I decided to keep it going for a few more days. On that day, I practiced my line confidence as well as some basic shapes again. I didn't draw on day 31, however, I went into a drawing frenzy on day 32. I started off with gesture drawings and then moved to learning how to draw hair because I knew I wanted to redraw my OC on that day. And then I drew my first full portrait in a long while. And it was a struggle. From the head shape, placing features, drawing eyes, everything was such a pain, and in the end, she did not turn out the way I wanted her to. Therefore, on days 33 and 34, I decided to reattempt the drawing. I used an old sketch of an idea for a pose and got to work, but again, in the end, I wasn't satisfied with the result. I felt really discouraged and wanted to give up, but I kept trying, and during the next days, I drew 2 more portraits of 2 of my other characters. I really liked to this day how they turned out and decided it was the end of my daily drawing challenge. So, the end of my challenge was pretty discouraging to me. but I pushed through and it was worth it. My main goal was to get back into drawing, and I can happily say that I achieved that. There were highs, there were lows, but most importantly, I kept drawing throughout the year. Rediscovering this footage after a few months made me cringe a bit, but also appreciate the effort that I put into filming and initially editing it. I see a lot of things to improve on, but if I kept going back to re-record certain sections or re-edit certain sections of the video, I feel like I'd never finish it, so I'll just leave it at that. This definitely was too big of a project for a first YouTube video. I would not recommend this. I have more planned for this channel as well as for my creative journey. I've been working on this one-shot comic / webtoon recently, and I really like animatics too, so if you're interested in my process and my stories to come, go ahead and subscribe and check out my other social media. If this video ever gets published, that is.